Hey all, welcome to Parker's Reefs. In today's episode I'm going to give you all of the updates for the 7-month mark on my dream reef tank. Alright guys, thank you for joining me on another episode of Parker's Reefs, and I cannot believe that this system has been wet for 7 months now. It feels like about 2 months, but I guess I did give it plenty of time to cycle, and getting it wet before that Christmas mark just meant that that whole whirlwind of the month leading up to Christmas, and then you've got New Year's, and then you roll into school holidays, and then before you know it, you're back at work, and then it's Easter, and then it's financial end of year, and here we are 7 months on. So things have moved super quickly, and I have to say there's been so much development on this tank and so much progression both with livestock and equipment. And in this video I plan on covering 3 major topics. We'll go over the equipment changes that I've done in the last few weeks. We'll go over some of the new fish that have gone into the tank and one fish that unfortunately has left the tank. And last but not least, we'll go over a bit of an overview of the corals, because that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, is how well the corals are going in this system. So let's jump on into it. Alright, so let's jump in and have a look at the new equipment on the tank. And first and probably foremost is the Reef Octopus Kalk Stirrer KS250. This thing is gigantic. And I've added this on. I've been totally curious about Kalk water for some time now, and I never really understood how it worked. I was always under the impression that the solution would continually get weaker and weaker as you added more RODI to the solution, and therefore I thought it was really difficult to get a consistent dosage of it. It was only when someone explained to me that the solution you have in here, and you can see down the bottom here where it's stirring, is what they call oversaturated, meaning that the water in this chamber has absorbed as much of that powder as it can. It's completely absorbed as much as physically possible. Therefore the excess sits down the bottom here. Therefore, the solution, the bit that actually comes out from the tank, which is up the top here, overflows there and then goes back into my sump, that's as strong as it can be, right? So as that drains out and more RO comes in, it will then absorb what's left of that powder, bringing itself up to maximum absorption again. Once I realized that, it actually made so much sense. So you overload the reactor with kalk water, and then as more RO water gets added to it, it will absorb it and then come full saturation. Obviously that only lasts so long. You can only load so much powder in there, and you can only keep that cycle going for so long. So I like to fill this unit up with some more, another 4 spoons of powder every 2-3 weeks or so, like that. Basically once I see there's not much powder sitting down the bottom of that paddle bar anymore. Now I am feeding it with the little Kamoa Pro T, the X1 Pro T. I've got that set to 2 mil a minute, and essentially that it comes in just under 3 litres a day. I've got it running fairly tame at the moment, just while I get a handle on it, but it is working an absolute treat. My pH, I must admit, I didn't get a huge reading on it before. I only added the pH probe to the tank when I put this on, but for the couple of days before the actual kalk water was in the reactor, I was getting around 8.2 to 8.3 pH, which is nothing to be ashamed of. It's quite good readings. Now I'm seeing low values of about 8.45 and high values of about 8.58. So it has lifted it up quite nicely, and I guess it has also just taken a little bit of a load off the calcium reactor in the background there. So still early days with the kalk water reactor, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I did learn the hard way to top it off with the powder, and I'll put some footage over the top now. The first time I tried to top it off, I mixed up some powder with some water and tried to pour it in. That just made a horrible mess, didn't work at all. I soon realized it was much easier just to drain the liquid down a little bit here, undo the top, move it across, and just tip the powder straight in. It made much more sense that way, and ever since then it's been much easier to maintain. Now, I've got the stir motor coming on every 4 hours for 5 minutes, so that just goes around. I have also put a NFC sticker here, which allows me just to put my phone next to it, and it'll start stirring for 5 minutes then, which I've just done because I wanted to show you guys it in action. So it's quite handy for me just to be able to hold my phone next to that sticker, and it'll turn on and start spinning for 5 minutes. But that's the first bit of kit, and it's an absolute beast. It's huge. If there was one thing I would change with this, I would probably put it up on a little stand just to raise it up maybe another, I don't know, 4 to 6 inches, get it up nice and high, because at the moment the point where it overflows and goes back into my sump is just not quite high enough, so I don't get a constant little drip coming out of it. I get a little bit of a pool, and then about 5-10 mil comes out. Then it waits for a while, and then I get about 5-10 mils coming out. So I may at some point make a little stand to sit that up on, just so that I can get that nice steady drip, but I'm sure that it's not that inconsistent that it causes any sort of problems. All right, we'll move on over to the next bit of equipment that I've put on this tank, and that is the Kessil A360X Refugium light. And wow, it's doing the job really nice. You can see this section here that is absolutely filthy at the moment. I've got a nice handful of Brachypus, I believe is how you pronounce it. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see it on video there, but I just chucked it in on those, on the Aquaforest biofill rocks, and just put the Kessil light on top. You can see the setting here. I've got it at about 3/4 strength, and somewhere between bloom and red, a little bit more on the red side of things, and that's been doing the job well. That's been on now for a couple of weeks. Not that I had huge issues with nitrates and phosphates before. In fact, I'm feeding very heavily to try and get some more nitrates and phosphates in there, but I just like the absorption of some other things like heavy metals and some other organics that algae reactors do, or fuges do. So I've never ran a large fuge like this, and I call this large because it's much bigger than a little algae reactor or anything like that. I've got the Kessil set to run opposing hours to my main lights, so it's running for about, well, I have it set for, I think, from 10 PM to about 8 AM at the moment. So it's running for 10 hours a night, which is quite a lot, but I've still got the intensity turned down a little bit, just because I noticed I was paling the Brachypus a little bit. So even though that algae is meant to be a very high intensity algae from what I've read, I thought maybe I was just giving it a little bit too much light, so I've just eased it back a little bit. This Kessil is an absolute blinder. It pumps out some serious light, and there was one point when I sat it down on the lid there when I was doing some things. I sat it there and turned the light on, and about 30 seconds later it had put that little hot spot there, because I am running the reflector on it, so it really intensified that light beam there. Lessons learnt. Thankfully it didn't fall into the water. Happy days. The reason why I'm running the Brachypus is my local fish shop recommended it. They think it has a much better absorption rate of organics, and also, should some of it escape into the main display tank, apparently is very, very tasty to tangs, and they will clean it up quick smart. So that sounded good to me, and that's the Fuge doing its thing. It is probably also helping with the pH of the tank, just running that sort of degassing, I guess, throughout the night, which all contributes. All right, on to the third and final piece of equipment that I've added to this tank, and that is the Aqualogic temperature controller up there, along with 2 Schego 600 watt titanium heaters. I'll see if I can get you a little visual on those. They're sitting down in there. I've had those sitting in my fish room for some time, waiting for the time to fit them up, as we're getting pretty cold in Australia now. In fact, this morning it was a good 4 degrees. I figured it was time to upgrade the 2 300 watt EHeims with the STC 1000 controller up to the 2 600 watt Schegos. I added the Aqualogic controller. I could have ran the Schego straight off the STC 1000, but what I really like about the Aqualogic is it's a commercial quality controller. You may hear online some people having trouble with the STC 1000s. They get some funky readings after a couple of years. I'm certain that is almost always down to the temperature probe. The Aqualogic actually runs a titanium temperature probe, which is just not going to corrode or have the issues that the plastic coated ones do, or even worse, the steel capped ones do. So it should be very, very reliable. One little tip with that, I noticed the display looks like it's flickering on camera there, but I promise in person it's all good. I originally had that set to Celsius. Now the lowest you can do on this unit of hysteresis is 1 degree. So when I set it to 25 degrees Celsius, it wouldn't turn the heaters on until they dropped below 24. That wasn't going to work for me, so I switched it over to Fahrenheit, and I still have that same 1 hysteresis. However, that ends up working out to be about 0.5 degrees Celsius, so I have it set to 77 Fahrenheit. So once it gets below 76 Fahrenheit, the heaters turn on, and once it goes over 77 Fahrenheit, they turn off, and that keeps the range nice and tight on that. It is a heater controller only, that model, so it's not controlling my chiller. I do have the chiller heater turned on just so that it can pick up the slack should there be any problems there, but it almost never turns on. And thankfully, so far, I have not seen any instances where the heaters are on and the chiller is on, so that is important. And I think that is about all of the equipment updates. I have the alkalinity dialed in at the moment. You can see on screen there, it is 7.54 DKH. Now that has been 7.54 for days now. It has been absolutely rock solid. I guess I've just got the values set up now with the calcium reactor and the Kalk wasser. It's doing its job perfectly, and this is keeping rock steady despite the fact that I'm getting some great coral growth, and I'm also getting a heck of a lot of coralline growing on my back wall, which is keeping me busy, keeping that nice and clean, because I do like a nice clean back wall. It makes those colours really pop a bit more in the display. But all in all, things are pretty good. My Hamali roller, I made a little modification to that. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see down in there. I just drilled some holes along the bottom plate there so I could get the maximum width up here out of the filter material. That's working a treat. Just gives me a little bit more filter pad each time. Originally it would it'd stop about there, so I'm getting an extra centimetre or so out of the each side out of the material, which I guess it all adds up. All right, onto the livestock update, and we'll start off right here with this guy. Here's a new addition to the tank, the Bellus Angel. Absolutely beautiful fish. I must admit, I did not think I could add another angel to this tank, and mainly because my main guy down here, Prius, the hybrid angel, I thought he would be an absolute prick to any angels added to the tank. Thankfully for me, my local fish shop pointed out that these guys here, the Bellus, are a completely different subspecies of angel, therefore should not cause any issues whatsoever between him and the existing hybrid, and I'm happy to say that he was spot on. Prius, who is known to be a little bit of a angry sod, hasn't really cared too much at all about the new angel. In fact, none of the fish have cared whatsoever. He's gone in with the least amount of hazing possible, settled in very quickly, and is eating plenty of food, so happy days there. Other fish that I've added is the golden Midas Blenny, and I've been wanting one of these for some time. This little guy here that's been named Summer by my daughter has settled in really, really well. You can see he's a nice active fish. He did spend the first 2 or 3 days in a little hole while he feared for his life, but he ventured out for some food and then realized no one cared about him whatsoever. So since then, he's been a happy chappy. All other fish are good. I did have one minor incident, and you can just see my male flame hawk down there. Just after getting Summer, when she was hiding in the hole, unfortunately I came home one day with my family, and Summer was out of swimming in the middle of the tank like she is there now, and I told the family not to go close or run over to the tank and scare her, but just to have a look how beautiful she is, because we hadn't actually seen her colours. My family were just trusting that she's this beautiful golden orange colour. I said, just don't run over to the tank, but have a look at Summer. She's out swimming about. And at that point in time, my female hawkfish got chewed up by this MP60. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I believe she may have just perched on it, and it just dragged her in and put a huge slice through the middle of her, which unfortunately was terminal for her. And like I said, it was fairly traumatic in that it happened right in front of the whole family watching it happen. So that was unfortunate, and it's never great to lose a fish. It is the first fish I've lost in this tank. You just see the little golden Midas just perching out of that hole there. I love the way they do that. It's one of those things. I don't think the MP60s are going to cause any other issues, in that she was probably about 4 times the size of my clownfish. They've had no issues. She's probably fairly similar size to probably the smaller one on my chromis. In fact, maybe a bit bigger than the smallest of the chromis. So I don't think there's going to be any issues. I think it was just unlucky, but I will eventually get a replacement flame hawk because they are such gorgeous fish. And poor old buddy down there, if we come around and see him perched under that acro over there, the poor guy, he does like a girlfriend, so we will get him another girlfriend shortly. Onto the corals, and there has been quite a few new corals added to this tank. It's difficult to keep track of all of them, but the corals that are in there are all doing quite well. Probably the only one that's struggling a little bit, and after my Walt Disney experience, it seems to be just always the expensive ones. I got a Space Invaders Pectinia that, look, it's not dead, but wow, it doesn't look great. It's just not puffing up. It's struggling compared to this Pectinia up here that is just your common $30 piece. It's always looking great and has lots and lots of colors. The Space Invaders one's just struggling a bit, but we'll give it a bit more time to settle in and see how we go. Other than that, my corals are just, they're doing great. I still obviously have a little bit of greenness on the sand here. Interestingly, it seems to be in lower light sections. This end of the tank's pretty good. You see a little bit over there. Could be flow related potentially. A little bit over there, mostly all clear there, but then this end of the tank just has a bit more. It does seem to clear up as the day goes on. So almost like the light will bake it off, and then like we are now and the lights have just turned on or just ramping up, it sort of looks a bit uglier, but I'm not overly concerned. It's one of those things, the tank is 7 months old. It's just going to take a bit more time to mature. But that being said, like the corals are just absolutely encrusting really well and getting some great growth. If I zoom in a little bit, the encrusting around this guy is crazy. Around here, the encrusting on this guy. I'll put some overlays of some of the pictures of these corals. I'm really, really happy with how they're settling in. Things like this big piece up here are just growing, both in size and in color, looking beautiful. The colors on this guy here are not picked up by the phone all that well, but it's got just this electric blue color to it. The piece up there that did go in electric blue actually went grayish for a while, and now it's getting very vibrant blue tips. Let's see what else is doing really well. This big piece here that I got from Exotic Aquaculture Australia is a $10 brown out. It's getting some, okay Colin, move on now. Getting some really nice colors and growth patterns to it. One other interesting piece was this acro here, and it's still looking fairly gray. This piece I picked up as a basically a brown out from a local fish shop, and Dave there said that that was his favorite piece. He would pick that over anything else. I was skeptical. I didn't think it'd amount to much, and I must admit it's been in the tank now for about 4 weeks, and it's finally starting to show some color. Not that you can really see it there, but we're seeing a few colors come through on that piece, which is always cool to see. Other things like we're getting some nice new tips growing off this blue stag here, and they're keeping lots of color. The acro in behind, it's super super polyp extension is even getting a little shoot coming out from the base of it, which is pretty cool. The corals are all doing really, really well, so I can't complain there at all. Things even like the LPS, that torch has grown considerably from when I got it from Nature Aquariums. Really happy with that. This yellow acro in here has just held its color like a champ, just really beautiful piece. And I do have one other fancy bit here. This is the PC Rainbow. It's doing really well as well. It's starting to show its colors and getting some good growth. So all in all, things are going really, really well. Oh, I shouldn't forget the Digis doing what Digis do. I've got the blue Digi in the front and the, what do they call it? The Forest Fire Digi in the back there, both growing so quickly. I've also got this little purple piece here, which has been in there for probably 5 weeks now, and it's got absolutely beautiful color. I'm very glad to see that it hasn't lost any color whatsoever. In fact, it's intensified. This piece here, I don't actually know what it's called, but it's probably my favorite in the tank at the moment. Looks really cool. And another little Millie next to it there, or Spath, just has some real cool colors coming through it as well. So all in all, all the corals in this tank are doing really, really well. I'm very, very pleased with how they're going. Again, this tank is only 7 months old. It's only been out of cycle for a few months. And I really feel like it's at probably the beyond 12-month mark. I feel like things are going much, much quicker with this tank than I've experienced before, particularly with SBS. I couldn't be happier with how things are going, so hooray. All right, guys, there you have it. That is the 7-month update of my dream reef tank. And like I said in the intro, I cannot believe how quickly it's gone. But I thank you all very, very much for following on this journey. I can't believe our subscriber numbers are over 15,000. We're heading for 25,000 this year. So if you're yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. It takes 2 seconds of your time, costs no money whatsoever. Hit that button down in the bottom corner and let's make Parker's Reefs one of the biggest reefing channels on YouTube today. If you've got any questions, comments, feedback, anything at all about any of the corals, fish, equipment, the setup of this tank, or just a question directly for myself, it does not bother me at all. Pop it in the comment section down below. I personally reply to each and every question on there, so if you are wanting to get in touch with me, that is by far the best way. Last but not least, guys, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. That lets the algorithm know that you thought it was good and other reefers should check it out. I'll stop rambling now, guys. I appreciate the support. Till next time, stay safe, keep reefing.